Welcome to When Laid Off, Paid Off, Redundancy Success Stories. Coming up in this episode.
We were a team of highly experienced, qualified therapists who were made to feel like dinosaurs. My feelings were confused. I felt loss, shock, and very sorry for the patients.
You're in charge of your response. It's not them that's telling you how to respond. Oh, you're going to respond really badly to this. No, you're choosing that.
You're watching When Laid Off, Paid Off, the show that provides you with positive stories and lessons to help you find the silver lining if you're struggling with challenges or uncertainty of redundancy. I'm your host, Liu Batchelor, and I'm a presenter, content producer, and TEDx curator. And I'm on a mission to help people share their passion and purpose. This episode is brought to you in partnership with Another Door. This episode's story comes from psychotherapist and film writer Claire Hershman, who was left feeling undervalued, confused, and very sorry for her patients when her service provision was axed. However, by maintaining a wide portfolio of freelance roles, she was able to carve her own unique niche and ultimately find her perfect career. Later in the show, we'll also be hearing from Eleanor Tweddell, redundancy mentor at Another Door, and author of Why Losing Your Job Could Be the Best Thing That Ever Happened to You. Eleanor will be sharing with us her insight in how to deal with the challenges of feeling undervalued and how to carve your own unique niche. But first, let's hear Claire's story, read by voiceover artist Suze Cooper.
I know you're supposed to believe that when one door shuts, another one opens, but when a door is slammed in your face, it doesn't feel like that at all. I'd always been self-employed and done many interesting things as a freelance photojournalist, which took me to many interesting spaces and places. But while I was training as a psychotherapist, I got a placement in a GP surgery in London, and they offered me a contract, and I worked there for 14 years as a part-time in-house psychotherapist, providing a counselling service as part of the team that was then an integrated GP service. I attended clinical meetings, and as a team, we were able to provide what I felt was an excellent service to our local community. The doctors and nurses and I knew each other well from many years of having team case discussions, and we had the excellent backup of the front reception, who all know our patients well. We were a local GP service that provided our patients with a well-linked, thoughtful service. I really enjoyed providing a service that was valued both by my fellow professionals and by the patients. Unfortunately for the service, a one-size-fits-all provision was introduced suddenly by the government, incredibly called Improving Access to Psychological Therapies IAPT, and all patients who qualified by filling out a form were allotted 6 sessions, and that was it. There was no discretion or meaningful assessment, and try as I did to continue offering some sort of useful intervention, it was obvious there was little of the service that I had developed that could be salvaged. Primary care psychodynamic therapy was axed in favour of one-size-fits-all cognitive therapy. We were a team of highly experienced, qualified therapists who were made to feel like dinosaurs. My feelings were confused. I felt loss, shock, and very sorry for the patients. Although I may not have been the world's most insightful therapist, I did my very best to provide a useful counselling service in a very deprived inner London borough. There is no one-size-fits-all. So what did I do next? Well, as it happened, I actually had other irons in the fire. That's the good thing about being self-employed. You never put all your eggs in one basket. I'd learnt that from being a freelance documentary photographer. I was also teaching psychology in adult education, as well as running therapy-orientated courses. Incredibly, I was running courses about divorce and divorce recovery, and I'm not sure how, but I got some publicity in the papers and Woman's Hour, and slowly I started being interviewed as an expert. What I was drawing on was my own expertise of being divorced from the NHS. Because I was so enjoying running courses, I developed my teaching portfolio and was lucky enough to pick up some teaching. But my real passion was actually writing about film, and somehow I got involved with an international circuit of academics who warmly invited me to join them. Each year we would go somewhere interesting in Europe and have a 5-day film and psychoanalysis conference. I was in my element and made interesting friends. I spent 6 months researching a film or a director and then gave my lecture. At first, it was a bit daunting, to put it mildly, since many of the audience were tenured professors in USA and serious published authors. But once I realised I wasn't trying to get a job, just do something I adored, I was able to relax and had fun. So, from being an NHS job where I was treated as a redundant dinosaur, running a service that no one was interested in saving, I was able to do something that I really enjoyed and linked me with like-minded people. I continued being a therapist, but only in private practice, which I thought was very sad for the patients, but meant that I could actually work in a way that I thought made sense and helped people. If you ask me what my bite-sized take on this is, hoist up the flag and see who salutes. It can be very surprising.
Thank you very much to Claire for that inspiring story. What I really loved was how Claire was able to combine some very different roles, therapy and film, but with this mix, she was able to bring a completely unique perspective. I find this intersection between disciplines really fascinating. Yes, sometimes they're not always obvious and they can take a long time to find, but if we have the patience and the open mind, then we can find something we are uniquely here to offer. Next up, we'll hear from redundancy mentor and author of Why Losing Your Job Could Be the Best Thing That Ever Happened to You, Eleanor Tweddell. We'll hear what Eleanor thinks of Claire's story and what advice she'd give people in similar situations. Eleanor, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Glad to be here.
So, in Claire's story, we heard a lot, particularly at the beginning, about her feeling kind of undervalued, outdated, which sounded like it was quite confusing in contrast to kind of positive things and feedback she was getting from her clients, which I can understand can be very confusing and frustrating, and something that probably a lot of people feel when maybe it's a management change or a structural change to their role as opposed to anything else. What would your advice be, both practically and emotionally, for people when they've got that struggle of, yeah, but I'm doing good, I can see the positive outputs, but still it changes and it's kind of out of your control?
Oh, so hard, isn't it? So hard. And I felt that pain coming through. You just feel it, don't you, when you thinking about the story. I think we've all had those moments when we feel hugely frustrated in an organisation. And I would say one thing, when she said that she felt outdated, I'm not sure if she was the one outdated, actually. It felt like they were kind of going backwards. So that's the other thing. Yeah. I mean, that's actually the first thing. Again, check in with your internal narrative, what you're telling yourself, versus actual facts around you. And a lot of times in these situations, it's you telling you something with absolutely no evidence of if that's true or not. So like an example of being in an organisation that's going through change and they're going in one direction and you feeling a deep sense of it being wrong or getting, you want it to be in a different direction, and you think, well, I must be wrong. I must be missing something. I probably need to change. Or actually, some of those leaders, do they need to hear your version? And so work on how you get your version or your insights, or how do they get your support, and then it suddenly starts changing. So even before you decide to leave, or you get made redundant, or you kind of exit you can do a lot of work in that sort of space of making you feel better so you don't get to a stress state in those circumstances. When organisations change, you can still own how you're responding to it and keep yourself in a good space. And I think that's so important, because none of us really know what's going on half the time in these big changes. And leaders and people who are trying to make change are under just as much stress. They need you on side as much as you need them as a leader. So it actually takes everybody to work well. So if you've got really strong views on things, I think people sometimes feel it's about them and us, and it becomes a fight, when actually you can do really well by trying to get your message across in a bit more of a supportive but suggestive way. So that's probably the first thing, to really feel like remembering that you're in charge of your response. It's not them that's telling you how to respond. Oh, you're going to respond really badly to this. No, you're choosing that. So you need to work on that part, and then you need to decide, okay, I'm going to work with this, or is it time out?
Yeah. And I guess that's it, isn't it? Like you said, you get that choice, but it's also okay to choose, this isn't. And because I guess potentially when there's a restructure, it's essentially sometimes it becomes a different role, isn't it? And like we mentioned in a previous episode around, finding the right role and, do something that's making sure that what you're going for, a rejection tells you that it's not quite right for you. And I guess sometimes there's an element of that sometimes, isn't there? That if you're sitting in a role and it's changed, it's not that you're wrong, it's just the role is now not what you would have applied for.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. It's just we all move on. We're all different people as well. And we all have different interests and we all have different views. And you've got to decide, well, how much autonomy have I got in this role to be me and do the best I can possibly be in this space? And if I haven't, and it's actually causing me to not feel good, then I've got to decide and be selfish about my health. That's kind of always got to be first. So yeah, I think there's no harm in trying stuff either. I get a lot of people asking me, well, my role's been made redundant, but they're offering me another one. What shall I do? And I say, well, if you kind of the money side of it is genuine, the worry and you're not great at uncertainty, what's the harm in trying the role and giving it the best shot you can? But you've got to get yourself in that space to say, I'm going to just give this a good shot. I'm going to go into this role open-minded. I'm going to bring full me into this space and I'm going to see what happens. And sometimes you're surprised and sometimes like 6 months later you get confirmation of, I should have perhaps gone. But you've lost nothing. So yeah, I think it's all about choice still and how you respond. And that's certainly the sense I got from that story. It's about choice.
Yeah. And kind of, I guess, leading on from that and this idea of choices, Claire mentions about not putting all her eggs in one basket and doing various freelance roles on the side and things that she enjoyed and having, by the sounds of it, quite a portfolio career, which gave her some options. And I really love how that opportunity to do different things ultimately enabled her to kind of create a job that didn't really exist by the sounds of it, or kind of a career, because she found this unique intersection between the various things she did that I imagine no one's going to go, oh, do you want a job in this? But she kind of managed to make it work because she brought something new and original. And that's ultimately it's the ultimate thing, isn't it? To have a job that you create that is uniquely for you. I mean, I know it's something that's never going to happen overnight, but what would you say? And sometimes I guess we stumble upon them, don't we? Rather than going, I want to get this really unique career because we don't know they exist. But yeah, maybe. So what's the question? The question would be kind of around if we feel we have something unique to offer, but that doesn't exist, how we maybe take those steps towards exploring it, very much exploring it, rather than, because it's not something we can head directly at.
Yeah, well, Claire was just an amazing example of giving stuff a go, following curiosity, and I think it's a case of, the portfolio career approach. When you do that, you've not got to worry too much about you, like who am I in all of this? Because we all want sort of like an identity. That's the only thing that sort of stops us from sometimes exploring these portfolio careers, because we worry about the question, so what do you do for a living? And then we're like, oh, I don't know. Like, really, it doesn't actually matter.
Welcome to my life. That's how I feel.
Yeah, exactly. What do you do for a living? Well, I'm this, and and you just sort of end up making it up anyway, don't you? Like,
yeah.
Well, I'm this, because you think that person might get that part of it. So you've just got to kind of tune it. I got the sense I just love this story for the confidence and the courage. That's what I took from this. It just full of it. And it wasn't that she always had a really clear aim of why. There wasn't necessarily, we talk a lot about big whys and why. Sometimes that's a bit overwhelming. I didn't get that sense. She sometimes just did because why not? I worked for Richard Branson for a while, and he had this big thing on the wall that said, some people ask why, I say why not. And I think that's fine sometimes. And that's the sense I got there. It was kind of like, oh yeah, well, why not? I'll give that a go. Let's see what happens. And as you've pointed out, what's happened with this story and the exciting bit about this story is through doing that, she started to reshape and reform. Well, actually, this is what I'm going to be. So living in that space of uncertainty of not having a defined job title for a while was fine. But then eventually she started really niching and being confident about, well, I like that bit and I like this bit. Oh, and I'm solving a problem for someone. And I think that's where I would start. So if someone's like, oh, I'm feeling inspired by this story, I quite like this portfolio career, and I quite like this niching where I could get to with this really cool niche, have a look around and think about tomorrow, how many problems could you solve for people with what skill sets you've got already? So if you just think, well, I could sort this out, I could sort that out, I could sort this out, then that's 3 jobs now that you could potentially do tomorrow. So, you know, you could do an amazing job at helping people to prep, answering questions for media. Well, that's what, you know, tomorrow, easy, not a problem. So, okay, is that a role that you want to go down? You could help people to create amazing films about themselves, and you could just spend an hour with somebody going, right, you tell me about yourself, right, this is the interesting bit, this is how you do a great film, and suddenly you're narrating stories of your lives with people, you know, that. And so when you start really thinking about what problems could I solve tomorrow, and it wouldn't really kind of take me out of comfort zone, suddenly you've got all these portfolio career options. And I got that sense that she was going, well, what can I solve? Oh, I can solve that. And I'm really interested in that. Oh, I'll put this together. It was really brave and courageous story.
Like it. And any other kind of final comments you'd want to mention or think are worth highlighting on Claire's story? We've covered a lot, but anything else?
Yes, I did. I went on a bit there, didn't I? I just love it.
No, it's good. I love
the
it.
whole vibe of exploring, like the exploration. I love that. I keep using this word brave and courageous, but it just means that someone's open to possibility, and they're open to the fact that sometimes it's going to go wrong, and that's okay. We just try something else the next day. And I think I resonate with it because I just didn't feel like I did that in the first year. I was so worried that I was going to lose something more than gain it. I was going to lose, what if I start down this track and I wasn't as brave as Claire? What if I start down this and suddenly it goes wrong and I fail and I'm going to have to go back to corporate? Have I lost all of that great sort of traction and goodwill that I've built up about me and who I am in corporate world? And well, I've lost all that, and then not only am I going back to it, but I'm going back to it as a failed entrepreneur. Like all of this went through my head, telling me this story of like, stay safe. So, oh my God. And then eventually I got to the space that Claire sort of describes and thought, oh, just do stuff. Yeah. Like, you know, try that, talk to that person. Like, you know, somebody mentioned something, I'm like, ooh, I could help with that. Oh, could you? Yeah. And before you know it, you're doing like a really random project for someone. And sometimes those projects you will get halfway through and think, what am I doing? But it doesn't matter, does it? You know, you've had a go, and the best way to learn how not to, what you don't want to do, is by doing it. So I think that's the whole spirit of that is, you know, you're earning money, you're doing stuff, it's fine. It all builds a really nice story that you can keep on telling people and yourself about, hey, I'm confident, I'm willing to do stuff, I'm willing to learn and grow, and I'm going to find this amazing niche eventually that'll just be super cool. Yeah. So I just love the sort of end punchline of what she does now, which is just like the most, as what you said, you're never going to put that down on a, what do you want to do? I want to do that.
It's not in the drop-down menu, is it? Of what job do you want? Yeah, what industry, what sector?
Someone asks you as soon as you've lost your job, what do you really want to do? Ah, well, this. You're not. Yeah. But what you could describe is the feeling, and describe the feeling of bringing together interests and strengths to then pull something together. And I read an article the other day about, you know, next year will be the year of jobs we never knew we needed. Yeah. People are just going to reinvent themselves into these, you know, extraordinary stuff that we were like, whoa, I didn't know I needed that, but I really need that. And channel that energy, channel that Claire energy to get you into that place of you being one of those people that, you know, does something that we don't know now yet, that we need this, but we do. We never knew we needed like a little phone with music and everything on it a couple of years ago. We wouldn't have said that, would we? We'd have thought that was crazy. So yeah, be that person that channels the portfolio career and reinvent something that we really need next year.
Brilliant. Love it. Eleanor, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Eleanor Tweddell, author of Why Losing Your Job Could Be the Best Thing That Ever Happened to You. For more tips, advice and support from Eleanor, check out anotherdoor.co.uk. Thank you for watching When Laid Off, Paid Off, Redundancy Success Stories. I hope you found this episode inspiring and it gave you a bit of hope. I'll see you next time.